and I'm going to make you a video today on kombucha, how to bottle it, how to brew it, how to flavor it. So I have a gallon of Jun that's ready to be bottled right now. It's been fermenting. This is the first ferment. It's been fermenting for about, I don't know, 5 days. For 1 gallon, a batch brew, 5 to 7 days is pretty typical for 1F, which means first fermentation. First fermentation is when it ferments with the SCOBY inside. So this is the SCOBY. Let's see if I can bring you closer. Oopsies. Here we go. So that is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. And what it does is it feeds off of the tannins and the sugar in the honey, and it creates more probiotics and I don't know, other good things. You'll have to read up on it because I don't know all of it. I just know it works for me. But anyway, so this is first fermentation. It's been in here. The tea has been in with the SCOBY for about 5 days. And now I'm ready to start my second fermentation, which means I'm going to pour it off into individual jars and add flavoring. I'm going to cover this back up because we don't want fruit flies to get into it. So I always cover it up. Now I have already juiced some kale, collard greens, a lot of pineapple, fresh ginger root, and fresh turmeric root, and I think there's a cucumber in there. So I'm going to use the rest of this. It was up to here, and I used the top half of it for the kombucha. So kombucha and Jun are different colonies, but the same concept. So kombucha is KT, which I have here in the corner. You can't see yet, but I just brewed that one without recording it, so I'm sorry. But I can show you on the Jun because it's the exact same process. It's the exact same thing, except that the cultures are slightly different. The Jun uses green tea and honey, and the KT, or kombucha, uses black tea, and it's supposed to use sugar. I've been using honey, and I found that it works just as good with the honey. So that's the difference between the two. So now I've got my juice already made. I'm going to take the cover off the spigot. You always want to keep everything covered nice and tightly because fruit flies love this stuff. And if they get into it, they will totally ruin it. They'll lay their eggs and it'll just be terrible. I luckily have not had that problem yet. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, 2 months, maybe 2 or 3 months. So here we go. I'm not quite sure how many jars this is going to make. I don't remember. Oh, one thing I want to do before I start, because a lot of the yeast will settle down at the bottom, and the yeast is what you really want. I'm going to stick my wooden spoon in here. You never want to use metal. I'm going to stick my wooden spoon in here and stir it up just a little bit. Because when I pour off from the spigot, I want to get some of that yeast into my jars. Okay, so now I'm stirred up. I'm covering her back up. I'm going to distribute the juice among the 2, 4, 6, the 8 bottles that I have here. And because I want my kids to drink this, I am going to add a little bit of fruit to some of these to make it more inviting. Kids typically don't like the green. So in just a couple of these, actually, yeah, I will. Okay, so that was perfect. This is about how much you want at the bottom. Maybe an 1/8 or 1/6, an 1/8, I don't know. I'm not good at estimating, but about that much. So now I'm going to grab my fruit. bit. I have an organic raspberry cherry rhubarb jam that I found at Costco, and the rhubarb is what sold me on it. I thought I'd give it a try because I love rhubarb. And you just need a tiny little bit, just maybe 3/4 of a teaspoon, not a whole teaspoon. Plop it in there. I'll be anxious to see how this turns out. Come on. All right, I've got my little block of organic jam in there. Typically, I'll use fresh fruit, like today I juiced the fresh pineapple, cucumbers, I told you kale, collard greens. So I typically like to use fresh fruit, but this has been fine. So now I'm ready. I stirred up the yeast at the bottom of the gallon container. I have my individual containers all ready to go. Now I'm just going to pour it in. You want to go as high up as you can on the bottle and use a lid, the tightest lid you can find. I had normal metal canning lids for these jars initially, but switched them out because I was a little worried about using the metal lids with the Jun, or with the kombucha, because it's very acidic, and any contact with metal will just, it'll ruin the taste of the kombucha or Jun. So anyway, I bought replacement lids for the canning jars on Amazon. Actually, no, I bought them through, there's a kombucha website. I forget what it's called right now. I'll remember, I'm sure, at some point. And they work fine. I don't think the seal is quite as tight as the metal lids, but it's fine. So by pouring off the first fermentation into the jars with the fruit, you are starting your second fermentation. So all the cultures, all the yeast and bacteria that's down here is now going to come in here and feed off of the juice, the sugar in the juice that's in here. And the good thing about that is that while it's fermenting, there's really no way to tell exactly how much sugar is in it unless you send it away and have it tested by a lab. But the theory is, and there is some research behind it, that depending on how long you ferment, almost all of the sugar is consumed by the SCOBY or by the microorganisms in here. I need a couple more lids. So when you're pouring off, I have a gallon container here, and this is a batch brew, which means it takes longer to brew, it takes longer to ferment, 1F. You start checking it around 5 to 7 days. It could go as long as 2 weeks, depending on where you're at, what your climate is. The Jun likes cooler temperatures. The KT, which is kombucha, likes warmer temperatures. I've been finding that mine's ready around 5 days. What was I saying? Oh, so when you're pouring off, you don't, with the batch brew, you're basically using everything in the container except for about 2 cups, which we call starter. So, and it's just about right. I might need to find a couple more jars, but it'll end up being like right down here. So you don't want to completely drain it. You need to leave some liquid in there, and the liquid that's left down there is super concentrated. That way when you add the new tea, the new green tea and the honey, the concentrated stuff comes up and mixes with the weak stuff, that just the plain tea, and it evens it out during the fermentation process. If that makes sense. Need to get a couple lids. So you can kind of see by the color why my kids wouldn't want to drink it. It looks healthy, but if I can get them to try it, I'm pretty sure that that little blob of rhubarb jam in there will make a big difference to them. Alright, so I am out of mason jars, so I'm going to grab, because I have, I don't know, probably around 24 ounces left to pour off, so I'm going to grab a different jar and just get rid of it. Well, not get rid of it, but empty it. Excuse me, Doug. Make sure I have a lid for that one. Oopsies. So this one will just be the rhubarb jam, because I don't have any green juice left. No worries. Since it's the whole container, it's about twice the size of the normal one. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons, and my kids are coming off the bus. I can hear them coming in, so it's going to be a little chaotic in a second here. And to this one, with just the rhubarb jam, I'm going to add some cinnamon. I'm recording. Sorry. I'm just recording how this process goes. Hi, Liam. Hi. I'm recording. I might be in here for like a half hour. Is that okay? Yeah. Peas and carrots.
Are you recording right now?
I am recording right now.
Can we like walk through here?
Walk through, yeah. But I'm talking, so you can sit down there at the table. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to fill this jar all the way because I'm getting kind of low in there, and I want to, again, make sure that I have enough left for an effective starter liquid. Ta-da! You can see that's what's left. Now I have chalkboard labels that I've been putting on the lids. They don't work very well on the mason jars because they have etched glass, so there's bumps, it's not smooth. So I've been putting them on the lids instead. Most of these don't have them yet, so that's just fine. I'm going to set these over here. Now for 2F, which is the second fermentation, they need to sit out on a counter, but out of direct sunlight. So I leave them on the counter here, next to the 1Fs, next to the big jars. And I'll show you in a second. Okay. So those are the bottles, you can see. These are the bottles I just bottled before the Jun. This is the KT. And you see I labeled it KT, pineapple, cucumber, kale, collard greens, turmeric, and ginger. So they get to sit here for about, you know, it varies a lot from brew to brew, but it's typically 3 days that it needs to 2F. Now the longer you let it second ferment, the more carbonated it will become, but it also will run the risk of becoming more vinegary. So you kind of want to keep it not sweet because you want the SCOBY and the what was I trying to say? you want the probiotics to feed off of the sugar, so you don't want it to be sweet, except for my kids, they like it to be sweet. So I like it on the more tart side. I like it almost vinegary, but not vinegary. So we're gonna leave that there, and I have some towels that I throw over them also. Just to cover them up. If you have the cupboard space, I don't. If you have the cupboard space, you can put them inside your cupboard and close it and just let them go to town in there. But you do have to be careful because they are fermenting. They will build up carbonation. So you need to check them at least once a day and give them a little twist of the cap and release any pressure that's building up in there. So I'm not crazy about the idea of putting it in the cupboard because if I don't see it on my counter, I'm not going to remember to, we call it burping it. I won't remember to release that carbonation or burp it. So here is just fine for me. My family doesn't like it, but that's okay. Okay, so now this is what you're going to be dealing with. Sorry, beans. This is what you'll be dealing with if you ever get a SCOBY of your own. You'll have this pancake-like looking, you can turn it up, this pancake-like looking thing in about 2 cups of starter liquid. Alexa off. And then you're going to need to feed it. You're going to have to put it in a glass container. Make sure it's nice and clean, preferably with a spigot because it just makes it super easy to pour off rather than having to dump the container. So preferably with a spigot. It has to be glass. The spigot preferably is stainless steel. That's your best option. This one is stainless steel. The other one on the KT, the kombucha container, is not. It's plastic, and that's fine for now. It's not your best option just because of the acidity. It will eventually wear away at that plastic, and some people are, you know, kind of leery about the chemicals in the plastic. I'm not having a problem with it. So, and this was super expensive, so I'm not quite ready to invest in another stainless steel spigot. Super expensive. This whole thing was $60, and this is just a 1 gallon. That's a 2.5 gallon in the corner, and I got it at Target for, gosh, I think it was 14 bucks, 15 bucks, something like that. So, I mean, there's a big price difference. Okay, so again, this is where you're starting. You've got your SCOBY in your starter liquid. You've got your new container that you're going to ferment in. You should have a cloth. This is just a hand towel, kitchen hand towel. And I have a rubber band around this one. I use a hair band on the other one. And on my hotel, I'll show you. But you want to rubber band it. You want to keep it nice and tightly closed. So see, you can use anything that's, you know, elasticy and will keep the towel down. So this is a SCOBY hotel. This is what happens when you brew long enough. Your SCOBY will have babies. It'll continue to reproduce and grow new SCOBYs. And that's a good thing. That means that you have a healthy SCOBY. But you can't have, see, these are the ones that I pulled off since I started brewing, and I'm throwing them in this little hotel because they're just going to sit and hang out in here until I need them, or somebody else wants a SCOBY and I gift it to them. What's up, Beans? Nothing. So anyway, I forgot what I was saying. Put this back on. So anyway, you want it covered. I'm going to put this guy back. And these guys in the hotel will drain the liquid. Excuse me, Beans. Will drain the liquid. It feeds off of it just like these do out here. And so every 2 weeks or so I need to add more tea to it. And that just keeps them alive and happy. So now I was thinking ahead. I started to brew some tea over here. Just gonna flip you around. Hopefully you can, oops. That's good. We're gonna come over here and we're gonna do some tea and add it to the Jun. Yes. So I already heated my water. It's kind of weird, but they say that you don't want to bring your water to a full boil. You want to bring it to about 3/4 of the way. So hot, definitely hot enough to dissolve your sugar or your honey, but not a boil. So I've done that. I gotta grab my tea bags. For the Jun, I have decaffeinated organic green tea that you can buy anywhere, but I bought in bulk online. Kombucha Camp. Kombucha with a K, Camp with the K. That's the website that I bought the lids from, the replacement lids. And you don't have to do this, but I rip off the little strings and the tags. So for 1 gallon of brew, you want to use anywhere between 8 and 12 tea bags, depending on how strong you like your tea. I'm usually on the stronger side, around 10. I ran out of black tea bags today when I did the kombucha, so I only put in 8. I think it'll be just fine. I'm not worried about it. So anyway, rip them off, throw them in. 2, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9. I'm not going to use this one because it has a rip in it. And I don't want loose tea. Loose tea is okay if it gets in there. You typically don't want it to get into your 1F container with the SCOBY. So that's why I'm going to, I could strain it out, but that just seems like a lot of work right now, so I'm not going to bother with it. I'll just get a new one. So I've got my 10 tea bags in here. My water's hot, not boiling, but hot. I'm going to add my water. So this tea kettle holds about 4 cups. So the good thing is you don't have to boil or heat a gallon of liquid, a gallon of water. What I do is I just fill this up. Again, it's about 4 cups. I put it in here. I steep the tea and I add the honey. I can find my cup. And then once all of the honey is dissolved, I will add filtered water to it to make up the difference between the 4 cups and the gallon. So this is a 1/2 cup measuring cup. I'm going to do 2 1/2 cups. You do about 1 cup. You can go a little bit less if you want. It's definitely 1 cup of sugar. Honey, you can usually get away with less than a cup. So there's 1/2 cup. And another 1/2. One thing I just learned, I had been spending a little bit more money on organic raw honey, and just found out that if you put raw honey into hot liquids like tea, you basically undo the rawness of it. You kill all the good stuff that's in it. So it's no different than using regular honey at that point. So I'm back to using my regular huge container of Costco honey. And I'm okay with that. know if you can see the steam coming off. It's pretty hot. Wasn't boiling, but it is pretty hot. It's steaming. The steeping time for each tea will be a little bit different. You just need to read the box, whatever kind of tea you're going to use. I have not started experimenting with flavored teas. I know hibiscus tea is super popular. I haven't branched away from the basic black and the basic green. But there are lots and lots and lots of options. I'll bring you a little closer. Not that you don't know what steeping tea looks like, but there it is. Tea bags floating in there. At some point here, I'm going to scoop out those tea bags. I want it to get a little bit darker. This tea bag broke open, so I'm going to pull that one out. So there are a few loose, well, there's a bit of loose tea in here. I'm not super worried about it. It did happen before and everything turned out fine. Okay. So there's nothing really scientific about this. When you want to get your tea bags out, you either reach in and grab them. If it's cooled down enough, you can just reach in and grab them. Or I use a strainer and I fish them out. Oopsies. It's okay to use the metal strainer right now because the SCOBY is not in the tea. You just want to keep the metal away from the actual SCOBY. Pop. Ow! I will toss those tea bags into my compost bin, so I'm not really wasting it. They go into the compost bin. Okay, so all the tea bags are out. The honey is melted. All I'm going to do now is add filtered water in here to cool down the hot tea. You can also dump ice in it. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw some ice in there because, as I mentioned earlier, the Jun likes cooler temperatures. So it's going to actually really appreciate the cooler tea coming in. So I'm going to do that now. Ron is making faces at me.
Tried to get you to laugh.
I'm trying to finish up because we got stuff to do.
Like what stuff? Are you gonna cut
Okay.
all this stuff?
So here's the ice, dumping it in. And that's still not enough to make up my gallon. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Call from Cell Phone KY.
Hold on. Hello? Hello? Telemarketers! Alright.
Mom, are you gonna cut this part?
No. Shoo, shoo, shoo. So, the ice is in there. It's definitely not enough to make a gallon. So, but it'll really speed up the process of cooling it down. You need to cool it down at least to room temperature because the SCOBYs, whether it's a Jun SCOBY or a Kombucha SCOBY, you'll kill it if you put hot liquid in it. It has to be room temperature or colder. Very important to remember. Excuse me, Liam. I'm putting filtered water in. This might take a second. Bear with me. Might sound like I'm in the bathroom. Leon, close the bathroom door. Wash your hands when you're done peeing. Sorry, it's coming. It's coming.
Can I entertain them?
Sure.
Yay!
intermission brought to you by Rana Babula. Alright.
Mom, did you stop peeing?
Whew, that felt good. Okay. I think this is probably enough. I'm going to go ahead and dump it in. And if it's not, then I can just add plain water to it. It'll all even out. See, there's a fruit fly on top there. Now, some people are really sensitive and they take their scobies out before they put the new tea in, and they set it on a plate. Some people even wash them down with vinegar. I don't. I just take the tea and I dump it in. It's fine.
This might sound weird. Open up.
Yeah, you can see some of the tea in there. Not ideal, but it'll be fine.
Is this cheese? It looks really gross.
Yeah, I need a little bit more water, so Ronna's gonna have to move.
Excuse me.
Since I know that there's a fruit fly around, I'm definitely covering it as I walk away.
And I'll keep stand on guard. Right.
So I'm just filling up some more water.
Sounds disgusting.
It doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it
Smells
doesn't.
like really bad things.
Oh, good. It's all for me. All for me.
Mom,
Ronna?
are you gonna cover it like that thing?
What?
This thing?
Yeah, I will.
With what?
Plastic wrap. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of tea in there. Oops. Oopsies. That's good. See all that you see all the yeast getting stirred up? This was all settled on the bottom. Now it's all stirred up. I'm gonna make sure my SCOBY mama is nice and even. You can see all the different layers here that have formed. I started with just this little first layer. You probably can't see that. And I've grown lots of babies on top. I'm looking for some homes for the Jun scobies. I don't want to start a new hotel, so that's why I haven't pulled the babies out yet. They're still hanging out in there, which is probably why it ferments, does the first fermentation faster. I said around 5 days, where some people's can go 2 weeks. The thicker the SCOBY is, the sooner, the quicker it'll process the tannins and the sugars. But it's also kind of tricky because it will also go to vinegar faster if you're not paying attention to it. I like having mine here in the kitchen on the counter because when I walk by it every day, I can smell it and I can tell if it's getting to the point where it's going to be vinegar soon. And that's how I usually know to do a little taste test, as if I walk by and I can smell it. Okay, oh, where did... I'm gonna grab that headband.
La-dee-da-doo-da. Oh.
How to do your homework.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to do piano.
So on goes the headband. Nice and tight. The towel is double folded, so it's got a double layer over the top. Kind of looks like a character from VeggieTales, don't you think? Then I'm going to go ahead and cover the spigot again. I'm going to dry it off first, because I don't want any mold or anything growing up in there. Dry it off really well. I was using balloons around the bottom here. They were water balloons, and it worked really well, but I think water balloons are a little bit thinner than normal balloons, and they started to deteriorate, I think, because of the acid. So I am now just using plastic. Just saran wrap, and I do put a rubber band over this one just to make sure it stays in place. The last thing you want is fruit flies in your stuff, in your booch. Okay, so that's it. I started with my SCOBY and about 2 cups of what we call starter liquid. It's the really concentrated liquid. And then I added, I heated up water. I threw, I think 10, did I say 10? 10 tea bags in. Put about 4 cups of hot water in. Threw some ice in on top of it. Then diluted it even more with just filtered water from my refrigerator. I dissolved approximately a cup of honey before I added the cold water. And then I dumped it all in. It's done. I'm going to mark on my little chalkboard that my 1F for the Jun is starting on the 10th of September. And, you know, in a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days, I'm going to give it a sniff, see what it smells like, give it a little taste test. If you taste test it, you want to, and if you don't know what it's supposed to taste like, go out to your store and find a bottle of kombucha, any flavor you want. They have lots of different kinds of flavors. Probably original flavor would be the best if you want a comparison. I stick a straw in underneath the SCOBY, and I cap it, pour it out into a cup, and then I drink it. You don't want to stick the straw in because you don't want your bacteria from your mouth getting into the container. You could pour it off from here, although you won't get, I kind of like to stir it up a little bit before I taste it. That's why. Because down here it's going to be more concentrated at the bottom. So it's going to taste like it's finished, but it might not really be up here. So that's why I do that. And that, my friends, is how you brew kombucha. In this case, it's Jun, J-U-N. And the difference again, Jun is green tea and honey. Kombucha, or KT, is black tea and sugar, but I use honey for that one also. I'm going to put this little guy back, or girl. I guess it's a girl, since it has babies. Can you grab me the rubber bands over there, love?
Which one?
The 2, both of them. Oopsies. I put some rubber bands over the hotel.
Mom?
Hotel stays in the pantry because it's not, it doesn't have an airtight lid, so I'm not running the risk of it carbonating and exploding in here.
That's weird. Why would it carbonate?
So this guy goes back.
And Mom, you know that's kind of weird saying it's like a girl and stuff. It's just weird.
What am I doing?
Very weird. Oh, your hair's poofy.
Sweetie, come on. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover them up because, like I said, typically you don't want them to be in direct sunlight. So this is where they stay. I'm going to put the towels the other way. Oops, I got to put down Jun 1F 9 10. So these guys are good. I will be, remember, once you bottle them, you have to check your second ferment, your 2F, daily to make sure that there's not too much carbonation building up. This one, I guess I have to set over here too. This one doesn't look as pretty. Anyway, let's put him over there. And now I wait. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, and hopefully you can find somebody with a SCOBY in your area. If you go on Kombucha Nation on the they have a Facebook page. You can put a post out there asking if there are local people in your area who have extra SCOBYs that they can gift to you. If not, I know there are some places that that sell them also. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.